Women's rights and fights. I will be talking today about some history of women's rights and current fights. And as social workers, we need to pay attention to reproductive rights and how women are represented. Before discussing current events, we do need to take a quick look at the past. Women fought and fought for the right to vote, and in the 1920s, it was finally signed into law. However, in reality, this only applied to white women and not women of color. It was not until the 1965 Civil Rights Act that people of color were included to vote. Of course, they were technically allowed to vote, but faced physical risks if they tried. The women's movement was primarily white and straight. It would not be until years later that women of color and differing sexualities were welcomed into this movement. And you can see that it took about 45 years for the same rights. NARAL is an organization fighting for women's rights to abortion. I attended a virtual presentation and learned more about the fight in Texas. NARAL is trying to help pass the Women's Health Protection Act, also known as WIPA. And right now it is a losing battle. 6 Supreme Court justices do not support abortion, and they will not be able to get enough votes. However, NARAL is still trying to go through with this to spread awareness about the issue and the dangers presented to women. Texas passed a bill that prohibited abortion after 6 weeks of pregnancy. And the main issues with this are that, one, many women do not even know they're pregnant that early. And it's another example of men controlling women's bodies without considering health risks. Women who have late-term abortions do not want them a lot of the time, but there are miscarriages and other health concerns that create a dangerous environment with this restriction. NARAL also mentioned the lack of access to abortion even when it is desperately needed. An example given was that Louisiana only has one abortion provider for the entire state. Just because someone has a right to abortion doesn't mean they have access to it, and that does not factor in transportation or insurance. Women are also deeply questioned if they do seek an abortion, and some states have a waiting period, which could push them over the time limit. The anti-choice movement has spread disinformation and misinformation to make people lose trust in medical providers and researchers. It really started out in the COVID pandemic by discrediting scientists, and now the same tactics are being used against abortion, such as creating fake health centers to spread false information about what abortion does. The next activity I attended was a presentation by the founders of Our Bodies, Ourselves. And this was an informational pamphlet. And this group has been together for 50 years. And this pamphlet has been transformed over the years to be more inclusive of differing sexualities, and it has been translated into several languages. The presenters talked about the history of pregnancy in the US and how women were given morphine without their consent. The doctor that brought the health dangers for babies from morphine to light was forced to step down from his practice. And this shows how money in the industry was more important than the well-being of the women and children. Doctors also hid the side effects of donating eggs from women, and they still do this a little bit today. It's glossed over with the large monetary reward, with no mention of harmful side effects, so hospitals can continue to make money. Women also went a long time without having any support in the delivery room and not being able to make their own decisions regarding medication. It was frowned upon for fathers to be in the delivery room, and it took a fight from the women to get that support. Women went without the support because sex and pregnancy were taboo topics, and men should not have been around it. No one talked about what giving birth was like, or sex, sexuality, anatomy. It was all hush hush. That is why these women created the pamphlet, Our Bodies, Ourselves. It goes through anatomy, pregnancy, and sexuality in an informational way that empowers women to be in charge of their own bodies. And you can see the original founders there. And up here are some of them that were in the presentation. So it is clear that women need access to abortion for medical and personal reasons. Women have faced challenges regarding equality and continue to fight today, which has impacted communities as well. There is a correlation to the rate of sexual violence, according to RAINN, and women continue to fight against the current patriarchy to have their voices heard and bodies respected. There's also an unequal access to resources, which needs to be worked on. So some communities have access to abortion fairly easily, while a state over might only have one provider that's hours away, and that affects low-income communities in particular because they don't have the same resources. And this creates a community that may not believe women as much either, so physical harm and violence could increase. And with sex education, the more we include comprehensive sex education that was age appropriate, the more our children will be prepared for the future and understand reproductive rights and women's health issues and medical procedures. So what can we do? On an individual level, we can start by believing women and supporting their decisions about abortion and anything else regarding their own bodies. We need to give women the space to heal and process as well, and not belittle or blame them if they do choose to have an abortion. And politically, we need to support candidates that support women's rights and also support comprehensive sex education. And all of this should be done through an anti-oppressive lens and listening to people with uteruses. We should shift our focus from narrowing in on straight white women and including women of color and of different sexualities to truly be inclusive as we move forward in this very controversial time period.